Snoop Dogg blamed the man who was driving the car Tupac got shot in, then confronted him face to face. But people online are now asking the one question nobody wants to answer. Did Snoop know something was going to happen that night? Because the pieces, they're finally clicking. Everybody thought they already knew the story. September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas. Tupac leaves a Mike Tyson fight, gets into a BMW with Suge Knight. A white Cadillac rolls up at a red light, shots ring out, and the greatest rapper alive is gone 6 days later. That was the version the world accepted for almost 3 decades, the cold case that haunted hip-hop like a ghost that refused to leave the building. But now, new court filings, federal documents, and interviews that were buried for years are surfacing, and the whole narrative is twisting into something nobody was ready for. Names that were whispered in back rooms are now being said out loud, on the record, under oath, and the internet is absolutely losing it. Let me break this down piece by piece, because when you lay it all out on the table, it's straight mind-blowing. First, the night itself. Tupac and his crew had just left the Bruce Seldon vs. Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand, and the fight ended quick. Tyson knocked Seldon out in the first round, so everybody was still buzzing, still amped up, and as they're leaving the arena, walking through the lobby, one of Suge Knight's associates spots a face in the crowd, Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Compton Crips, and the second Tupac sees him, it's on. Security footage from that night shows Tupac confronting Anderson in the MGM Grand lobby. He asks him straight up, "You from the South?" And before Anderson can even answer, Tupac swings, drops him, and then Suge's entire entourage jumps in. They're stomping this man out right there in the casino lobby. Hotel security eventually breaks it up, but the damage was already done. Now here's where people online start connecting dots. Keffe D, Dwayne Keith Davis, Orlando Anderson's uncle, was reportedly in the casino that night, not inside the fight, inside a Cadillac, waiting. And according to federal documents that have since been released, Keffe D was the one calling the shots, literally. Reports say that after Anderson got beaten down in that lobby, he ran back out to the car, and the moment he told Keffe D what happened, the plan was already in motion. They weren't going to let that slide. They started following Tupac and Suge Knight's BMW through the Las Vegas Strip, waiting for the right moment. And fans online turned into full-blown investigators after those federal documents dropped. They went back through every piece of footage from that night, slowing down frames, zooming in on reflections, studying the parking garage security tapes, comparing timestamps. People mapped out the exact route Tupac's BMW took from the MGM Grand to the intersection of Flamingo Road and Koval Lane, and they noticed something that sent chills down the internet's spine. Tupac and Suge weren't alone. There were reportedly security vehicles following the BMW that night, multiple vehicles in a loose convoy. So the question everybody started asking is this: how did a white Cadillac manage to pull right up beside Tupac's car at a red light, with security trailing behind them, and nobody saw anything? Nobody intervened? Nobody got a plate number? That's the part that doesn't sit right with people, because at 11:15 p.m. that night, the white Cadillac rolled up to the passenger side of the BMW, the back window came down, and someone inside opened fire with a .40 caliber Glock. 4 rounds hit Tupac, 2 in the chest, 1 in the arm, 1 in the thigh. Suge Knight got grazed in the head by a fragment, and the Cadillac disappeared into the Vegas night. Online detectives went back through the timeline and laid something out that shook the whole community. Keffe D allegedly directed the driver, Terrence T. Brown, to follow Tupac from the parking garage. Orlando Anderson and DeAndre Dre were reportedly in the back seat, and according to Keffe D's own words he put on record in a 2009 police interview and later in a documentary, he claimed to be in the front seat when those shots were fired. Think about that for a second. The man who allegedly orchestrated the whole thing sat in the front seat and watched it happen, and then stayed silent for over 2 decades. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking into place, and honestly, it's darker than most people realize. To understand why that white Cadillac pulled up on Tupac that night, you gotta go back further, way further, back to 1994, November 30th, Quad Recording Studios in New York City. That's the night Tupac was robbed and shot 5 times in the lobby of that studio. He survived, barely, but that night changed everything. See, Tupac was at Quad Studios that night to record a verse for one of Diddy's artists, and after the shooting, Tupac became convinced that Diddy and Biggie knew it was going to happen. He said it publicly, he said it in interviews. In a 1996 interview with Vibe magazine, Tupac said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I believe so, I do believe so, I have proof." He was talking about Diddy's involvement. He said it wasn't for the world to know, but between them, only Diddy knew the truth. And that accusation, that belief, ignited one of the deadliest rivalries in music history: East Coast versus West Coast, Bad Boy versus Death Row. And it wasn't just rap beef, people were dying behind this. The energy in the streets was nuclear, and at the center of that storm were two record labels, two ideologies, and two coasts that refused to back down.
Now here's where it gets even crazier. According to court documents filed in 2024, bombshell filings that the public wasn't supposed to see for years, a previously buried 2009 police interview with Keffe D revealed something that sent shockwaves through the hip-hop world. In that interview, Keffe D reportedly claimed that Diddy, Sean Combs, was allegedly the one who said he needed to get rid of Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur, and reportedly offered $1 million to make it happen. Let me say that again. According to those federal documents, according to what Keffe D told investigators, there was allegedly a bounty, a price on Tupac's head, and the internet went absolutely nuclear when that information surfaced. Now, Diddy has denied this repeatedly for decades. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police stated in 2024 that Sean Combs has never been considered a suspect in the Tupac Shakur homicide investigation. He's never been charged. He's denied it on The Breakfast Club. He's denied it on Today. He's denied it everywhere. But the streets remember differently, and so does the internet. Because here's the thing people keep circling back to. The rivalry between Tupac and Diddy's camp wasn't just about music, it was about money, power, territory. Death Row Records under Suge Knight was dominating the West Coast. They had Tupac, they had Snoop, they had Dr. Dre. They were printing money. And Bad Boy Records on the East Coast was doing the same thing with Biggie, Mace, and the whole Harlem crew. But the tension between those two empires wasn't sustainable. Something was going to break. And when Tupac started publicly calling out Diddy, publicly accusing him of setting up the Quad Studio shooting, that's when the temperature went from hot to volcanic. Tupac wasn't just rapping anymore, he was waging war, and the people around him, the people who should have been protecting him, they were all caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Keffe D and his crew had their own reasons. According to reports, there was money involved, street money, drug money. Allegedly, someone in the operation felt played, felt like they got burned on a deal. And when Orlando Anderson got stomped out at the MGM Grand, that was the spark that lit the fuse on a bomb that was already ticking. Put all that together, the personal vendetta, the alleged bounty, the street beef, the humiliation in the casino lobby, and it looks like the perfect recipe for the worst night in hip-hop history. But here's the part that really hits different, and I need y'all to sit with this one for a second. Because behind all the conspiracy theories, behind all the street politics and the federal documents and the online investigations, there's a human being, a son, a poet, a voice that changed the entire trajectory of music and culture. Tupac Amaru Shakur was 25 years old. 25! He had his whole life stretching out in front of him. Albums planned, movies lined up, ideas that would have changed the game 10 times over. And in the span of a few seconds, at a red light on Flamingo Road, all of it was taken away. Not because of something he did wrong in the grand scheme of life, but because of a storm that was brewing long before that night in Vegas, a storm that he got pulled into, a storm that consumed everything it touched. And the thing that haunts people the most is the 6 days. Tupac didn't die at that intersection. He held on. For 6 days, he was in the hospital fighting. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was by his side. The world was holding its breath. Fans were praying. His crew was pacing hospital hallways. And on September 13, 1996, the light went out. That's somebody's child. That's a mother who had to bury her son. And the people responsible allegedly walked free for nearly 3 decades. 3 decades of silence. 3 decades of whispers, 3 decades of a mother carrying the heaviest kind of grief there is, the kind where you know what happened, but the system can't seem to find its way to justice. And people online feel that, deeply. When you scroll through the comments on any Tupac tribute video, any documentary clip, any discussion thread, you see it. Raw, unfiltered love for a man most of these commenters never met, but they feel like they lost family, because Tupac didn't just make music, he spoke to people's souls. He talked about poverty, about injustice, about growing up with nothing and still having everything to say. He gave a voice to the voiceless. So when folks say they did Pac dirty, it's not just about a murder, it's about what was stolen from the culture, what was stolen from a generation that needed him. And that's the part that no court case can fix, no verdict can undo. Now this whole situation gets even crazier when you start zooming in on the people who were supposed to be closest to Tupac. And I'm talking specifically about 2 names that the internet has been dissecting for years, Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg. Let's start with Suge. Marion Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, the most feared figure in all of hip-hop at that time. This is the man who was literally driving the BMW that Tupac got shot in. He was right there, in the driver's seat, took a bullet fragment to the head, and for years, people have asked the same question over and over and over again. How did the driver survive with barely a scratch, while the passenger took 4 rounds? Now, to be clear, people online have debated this from every angle. Some folks say it was just the positioning. The shots came from the right side. Tupac was in the passenger seat, closest to the shooter. Suge was behind the wheel, further away. It lines up geometrically. But others online aren't buying it. They point to the fact that Suge Knight has, from prison, repeatedly alleged that Diddy was behind the hit. He said it in interviews, he said it through intermediaries, he's basically screamed it from behind bars for years. And then there's the Snoop Dogg angle. And this is where the internet really goes wild. See, Snoop and Tupac were label mates at Death Row. They made music together. They were supposed to be brothers. But according to multiple accounts, the relationship between Snoop and Tupac had deteriorated badly in the weeks before the shooting. Suge Knight himself has claimed that Tupac actually tried to confront Snoop shortly before his death, that there was real tension, real friction. People online latched onto something specific. They point to the fact that Snoop Dogg later said he would have stopped everything if he'd been aware of what was really going down, if he'd been in the vicinity, if he'd been able to speak on the beef between the coasts, but he wasn't there. And some folks online ask, was that by design? Was Snoop kept away intentionally, or did he keep himself away because he knew something was in the air? Now, Snoop has spoken on this publicly, multiple times. He's expressed grief over Tupac's death. He's confronted Suge Knight face-to-face about it. There's documented footage of Snoop going to Suge after the shooting and demanding answers, saying things like, "You put all of our lives in jeopardy," telling Suge to come to his room so they could talk privately, just the 2 of them. No entourage, no weapons, just clarity. And the internet absolutely exploded when that footage circulated, because it painted a picture of a man who was either genuinely hurt and searching for truth, or a man who was performing grief while allegedly knowing more than he let on. And people are split right down the middle on which version they believe. Meanwhile, fans online have been working like full-blown FBI analysts on this case. They've pulled up old interviews, cross-referenced timelines, compared statements Snoop made in 1997 to statements he made in 2005 to statements he made in 2020, and they've flagged what they call inconsistencies, small shifts in language, subtle changes in how he describes that night, details that appear and disappear depending on who's asking the questions. Is any of that definitive proof of anything? No, absolutely not. Let's keep it real. Everything is speculation until a court of law says otherwise. But the pattern, the narrative the internet has built around these moments, it's compelling enough to keep millions of people glued to their screens. And here's one more layer that people keep bringing up. The man who drove the truck that was reportedly behind Tupac's BMW that night allegedly told investigators that Snoop Dogg, Diddy, and several other people had something to do with what happened. That's not a verified claim from a courtroom. That's an allegation from a witness that the feds reportedly documented. But the fact that it exists in a federal file somewhere, that's what has the internet spiraling.
And while all of this is playing out in the Tupac case, you can't ignore what happened just 6 months later, because the shadow of that Vegas shooting stretches all the way to Los Angeles. March 9, 1997, the notorious B.I.G., Christopher Wallace, Biggie Smalls, gunned down in a drive-by after leaving a Soul Train Music Awards after-party. And here's what makes the internet's collective brain short-circuit. According to multiple reports, Biggie didn't even want to be in Los Angeles that night. His original plan was to fly to London for a press tour, but allegedly that trip got canceled, and instead he ended up at a party on what many considered enemy turf, the West Coast. And people online have pointed to that decision as one of the most suspicious redirects in music history.
Kirk Burroughs, who co-founded Bad Boy Records with Diddy, allegedly stated in a Netflix documentary that Diddy talked Biggie into staying in LA instead of going to London. And Diddy himself, on The Wendy Williams Show, admitted he felt some responsibility. He said Biggie was supposed to go to London that night, and he let Biggie talk him into staying. But Burroughs tells a different version. He says Diddy was the one who insisted on the party. That contradiction sits like a boulder in the middle of this entire narrative. And then there's Greg Kading, former LAPD detective, the man who spent years working the Tupac and Biggie cases. He's gone on record saying that Diddy was allegedly a hindrance to the Biggie investigation, that Combs was, in his words, stonewalling people from talking. In Kading's theory, which he stated publicly, is that Diddy allegedly knew that if investigators made progress on Biggie's murder, those same trails would lead back to Tupac's case, and that, allegedly, would lead back to him. Heavy allegations, and again, unproven. Diddy has denied everything. He's never been charged in connection to either death. But the internet doesn't operate on the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. The internet operates on patterns, on coincidences, on the accumulation of small moments that, when stacked together, create a story that feels too loud to ignore. And speaking of patterns, let's talk about Orlando Anderson for a second, the man Tupac confronted in the MGM Grand Lobby, the primary suspect for decades in Tupac's actual shooting. Orlando Anderson was never charged. He denied any involvement. And in 1998, just 2 years after Tupac's death, Anderson was killed in an unrelated gang shootout in Compton. Dead men don't testify. And that phrase has echoed through every forum, every comment section, every late-night discussion thread about this case since 1998, because Orlando Anderson was the one person who could have confirmed or denied everything, the one person who was allegedly in that back seat with a weapon. And he's gone, taken by the same violence that took Tupac. Keffe D is the only living person from that white Cadillac, the last man standing from the car that changed hip-hop forever. And that's exactly why his trial, now pushed to 2026, carries the weight of 3 decades of unanswered questions. In this story, it's bigger than Tupac, it's bigger than Snoop, it's bigger than Diddy or Suge or Keffe D. What we're seeing here is the anatomy of how an entire culture was nearly destroyed from the inside out. Think about what hip-hop lost in those 18 months between September 96 and March 97. 2 of the greatest lyricists to ever hold a microphone, 2 voices that defined a generation, 2 lives that represented everything beautiful and everything broken about the world they came from. Gone, both of them, in drive-by shootings, in the prime of their careers. And the machinery that surrounded them, the labels, the executives, the street politics, the rivalries that were manufactured and monetized, that machinery kept grinding even after the bodies went cold. Records kept selling, documentaries got made, people wrote books, built careers, launched entire media empires off the tragedy of 2 young black men who were weaponized against each other. The bigger conversation here is about what happens when artistry gets consumed by industry, when talent becomes territory, when the people who are supposed to protect artists are the same people who put them in danger. Suge Knight is serving a 28-year prison sentence for a separate incident. Diddy was convicted in 2025. Keffe D is awaiting trial in 2026. The dominoes that started falling in 1996 are still falling right now. And for the younger generation watching this, the ones who discovered Tupac through streaming, through TikTok clips, through AI colorized footage, this case is more than a cold file that finally warmed up. It's a mirror. It reflects what happens when ego, money, and power go unchecked, when loyalty becomes conditional, when the people shouting "ride or die" are the first ones to look the other way. Every few years, a new wave of information surfaces, a sealed document gets released, Someone who's been silent for decades decides to talk, and each time, the internet reassembles the puzzle, adds the new piece, and stares at the picture forming in front of them. And the picture keeps getting clearer, not because of one smoking gun, but because of 1,000 small truths that together paint something undeniable. The internet has become the world's largest cold case unit, and they don't forget, they don't get reassigned, they don't retire, they just keep digging. And for Tupac Amaru Shakur, that might be the closest thing to justice the culture has had in 30 years. Whoever was responsible, whoever gave the order, whoever sat in that car or stood on the sidelines and said nothing, the clock is ticking louder than it's ever ticked before. Because the truth doesn't expire, it just waits. And here's where we stand right now. As of the latest reports, Keffe D's murder trial has been pushed to 2026. He's already serving time for an unrelated jailhouse altercation. He changed his defense attorneys in 2025, and the prosecution says they have evidence, new evidence, the kind that reportedly connects the dots between the Cadillac, the casino, the people who allegedly funded the hit, and the people who allegedly stayed silent. But let's keep it 1,000% real. The internet wants more than just Keffe D. People are saying his arrest was only the first thread, and when you pull that thread, the entire tapestry starts unraveling. Every allegation about Diddy's involvement, every whisper about Snoop's proximity to the events, every theory about Suge Knight deliberately putting Tupac in harm's way, all of it funnels into a courtroom that's about to become the most watched legal proceeding in hip-hop history. And here's the wildest part. Tupac's family hasn't stopped. In 2024, reports confirmed that the Shakur family hired an attorney to investigate whether Tupac's murder could be linked to Sean Combs. They're not letting this go. After 30 years of heartbreak, they are still fighting, still pushing, still demanding that every name gets held accountable. Speculation is swirling that the trial could crack open cases that have been dormant for decades. The testimony from Keffe D, if he takes the stand, could implicate people who thought they were untouchable. And the pressure is building from every direction, from the feds, from the families, from millions of voices online who refuse to let this story die quietly. The walls are closing in, slowly, but they're closing. And whoever thought the passage of time would erase what happened at that intersection on September 7th, 1996, they were wrong. Stay locked in, because this story is far from over. More details are dropping, more documents are surfacing. Keffe D's trial is on the horizon, and reports say the prosecution is sitting on evidence that hasn't been made public yet. When that courtroom opens, everything changes. So I need to hear from y'all. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you believe Keffe D acted alone, or was he just the foot soldier for something much bigger? Do you think the full truth about that night will ever come out? And do you think the people who allegedly knew what was going to happen will ever face real consequences? If you're a Tupac fan, drop the double twos in the comments. Let the world know his legacy still lives. Make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because we are covering every single twist, every filing, every revelation that comes out of this case. You do not want to miss what's coming next. I appreciate every single one of you for rocking with me on this one. This was a heavy topic, an emotional one, but it's a necessary one, because some stories deserve to be told. Some names deserve to be remembered, and some truths, no matter how long they've been buried, deserve to finally see the light. Tupac once said, "Reality is wrong, dreams are for real," and maybe that's the realest thing anybody ever said, because the reality of what happened to him was wrong, dead wrong, but his dream, his vision, his words, they're still alive, in every speaker, in every lyric, in every single person who refuses to forget. Rest in power, Tupac. Amaru Shakur. The world is still listening. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. And remember, in the age of the internet, nothing stays buried forever. Peace.